Good evening, my beautiful, handsome son. I'm sorry that I missed your calls and I hadn't returned your calls earlier. I'll give you the rundown.
So, I lost my pops 2 years ago to cancer. And I'll be honest, not a day goes by that I don't miss him. You know, that I don't feel cheated at what I never got to have. He split when I was five or six. He cheated on my mom, got the woman pregnant, and they got together. At the time, you know, I felt what most kids feel when, you know, your parents suddenly gone. I felt grief, confusion, sadness. Nights spent crying, days spent waiting, you know, waiting for him to walk back through the door. He and my mother didn't have a great relationship. Ultimately, it ended with me seeing him put his hands on her. He didn't hurt her, but he knew what he did, you know. He knew that I'd seen it, and he knew that he fucked up. A lot of my childhood was spent waiting, you know, waiting on the weekends for him to come pick me up so we could spend time together, waiting on the stoop in hopes that he'd actually show up, and a lot of hours wasted waiting when he never did come. But eventually, you know, all those hours of waiting turned into years, and as they passed by, my mom eventually got remarried and we moved across the country, so the little that I did get to see my father became none at all. The childhood turned into adolescence, those feelings of sadness turned into anger, the grief became feelings of betrayal. From about 10 to 19, I ain't seen my father much at all. There was one summer, I think I was like 15, that I went to see him, but that trip got cut pretty short. Like, we had just kind of grown apart at that point. It wasn't until that I was 20 that I went to like really spend some time with him and his family. He ended up marrying the woman that he cheated on my mom with, and the one kid that he had with her turned into 4 kids. At first, I ain't gonna lie, I was kind of angry. I felt jealous. You know, jealous that he did for them what he didn't do for me, that he stuck around and that he raised them. But, you know, we didn't butt heads as much at that point. I was still holding on to a lot of the negativity in my heart from all the bullshit over the years, and I refused to let my walls down, even for him. I spent most of that time out there, you know, working or just out of the home, whatever I could do to avoid just like the shit that I was too immature to deal with. Eventually, you know, I left. I moved back home, continued on my life. In late September of 2022, I got a call from him when I was on my lunch break at work. And, you know, it started off normal, like, you know, little pleasantries, like, hey, how you doing? How's work? How about the Yankees? You know, that kind of bullshit. But I could tell there was something on his mind, and he wasn't saying it, so I was just asking him. I was like, yo, what's up? And, you know, he told me that he'd been having pain in his side, and he went to the VA, which, you know, he was in the Navy for a while. But the doctors there just kind of blew it off, so he just kind of kept it pushing. But he told me, you know, it kept getting worse, and he went back again. They ran a couple tests, but same thing, you know, it's a whole lot of nothing. And finally, he kind of got fed up, so he went to go see an actual doctor, not through the VA, but through his own insurance. And they ran extensive tests, and sure enough, he had pancreatic cancer. You know, your whole life, you know the possibility of shit like that happening to your family or to your parents is like always looming, but you never really expect it until it happens. So I asked him, I was like, you know, what about treatment options? You know, what can we do? He told me that they caught it late. If the VA doctors had taken it more seriously, they probably would have had a better fighting chance. But that's just fucking unfortunately how America treats its vets with bullshit healthcare. It was getting close for the time for me to, you know, go back to work. And I told him, I was like, you know, I'll call you back after I get off. We'll keep talking about it. But before, you know, I was able to hang up, he told me something. And once he told me, I did not clock back in for work. I went home. But he told me, he said they only gave me about a year to live. And, you know, I was sitting in my car when he told me. It was right before I went back from lunch. And it must have been maybe 15 seconds that passed, but the shit felt like 15 minutes. All I could do was cry. All I could think about was like all the time that we fucking wasted, all the memories I never get to have with him, all the things I'd accomplished that he'd never know about, and all the things that I do that he'd never get to be proud of me for. I was 26 at the time. You know, I had matured a lot since when I was 20 that I was living with him. And, you know, at this point, we were, like, finally getting along really well. Like, I was telling him about work stuff. You know, we would just kind of talk about, like, fishing or sports or, like, cars. Just, like, you know, regular dude shit. And after 15 years of just wasted time, you know, I finally started building the foundation of a relationship with my father. And after 15 fucking seconds, that shit got snatched away in the blink of an eye. I spent the next, few months talking to him basically all the time. I was checking on him, you know, seeing how the treatment was going. He was doing chemo and everything. And I went to go see him in February. And I ain't gonna lie, man, it was dope. You know, the whole time I felt like a little kid again. I was like palling around with my dad, going to the movies, getting ice cream. Fucking, you know, spending time with him and my younger siblings that I didn't really get a chance to know. And, you know, it was weird. Like, I was bigger than he was now, like taller and just larger in general. I was the one driving. I was the one paying for stuff. Like, it was weird, but it was nice. I ain't gonna lie, you know, I hated leaving. I hated that I even had to leave, but I promised him that I'd come see him soon. But unfortunately, I lied. He went into hospice in the beginning of May, and I wasn't really able to afford another $2,000 on a rental and hotel and flight and all that shit, and I wasn't able to get away from work at the time either. Kind of used it as an excuse, you know. Like, the truth was, I couldn't bear to see my father like that. The man who was once larger than life, all shriveled up and half dead. To this day, not going to see him at the very end may be the most selfish thing I'll ever do, but I'm still glad that I did it. I called him every day, you know, I told him I loved him. He died May 18th, 2 weeks before my birthday. After 20 years of halfway having a mediocre relationship with my father, I finally began to fix it. After 20 years, I lost a father that I never really got a chance to have in the first place. I wish I could say that it doesn't still hurt, you know, that I'm not still angry sometimes, that I don't still feel like a 6-year-old boy that he abandoned. Sometimes I do. But, you know, sometimes I also feel like the 29-year-old man who understands, misses, and forgives his father. I love you, Pops. I miss you.
And, it's been a miserable 24 hours since I got home, but little by little I'm starting to improve. Anyways, you're either working or in the middle of getting busy, so I understand you're not picking up. I will talk to you soon. Bye, puppy. I love you.